Hello and welcome to another episode of Things That Spark Joy. So in this episode I'm going to be looking at this, which is a second edition of the C programming language by Brian W. Kernighan and Dennis M. Ritchie. And this book, I suppose you could say, sparks joy on three levels. One is the contents of the book, and as you can see from the title, it's a book on the C programming language. But it's a great book for learning C and starting off and seeing how C was in its original form. Obviously, what I say in its original form, this is the ANSI C version. I don't have a copy, the first edition of this, so I'm not sure what changes were actually made between, say, the 1978 version and this one, which is 1988, so 10 years old. But you can see it goes through in pretty great depth of important areas that you need to know about C, along with information about the standard library. And I went through this obviously at the time that I bought it and tried out a few of this. I don't think I went quite through cover to cover, but it takes me back to a time around, just check again the date on that because I've already forgotten the second publication date. So this would have been 1988. So I was trying to think back. Probably I attempted to learn C stroke C++ sometime around the early 90s. And so this was my starting point for learning C. I did actually also have access to, what was it, that early, was it Visual C++ from Microsoft? There was a book which had a, like I suppose you could call it a demo version of Visual C++, like one of the early iterations of it. But I just wanted to sort of go back to the, what would you call it, the motherlode, and experience the language from the ground up, and just using a chapter as an example here. Let me just go back to something a bit more straightforward. Oh, here we go. Constants and logical operators, types, operators and expressions, chapter 2. So you have excellently laid out, and that's the other thing, that's the second thing. I just love the layout of this. There's sort of fantastic use of white space. You've got the two typefaces they're using here are Times New Roman and Courier. And you can tell that because it actually lists them at the front of the book. But it's a great book, I find, to digest, just in the way it's laid out. Everything's in nice, manageable chunks. So it lends itself well for sort of working through. And if you just like to do things a little bit at a time, it's great for that. And then you'll get to certain parts of the book, and there'll be as well various exercises. And you can see here in this chapter you got an exercise there. So it is really nicely what I call sort of interactive book, where you've got stuff you can sort of type out, and also when this came out, nowadays it's quite nice when you're learning a language because a lot of the books supply the source code, so you can literally download and run it. At the time that I got this book, now I could probably go online and all of this stuff would be available on GitHub or wherever. but it was great at the time. You literally had to type this out as you went along, so that was good. There's a lot to be said for physically typing code rather than just copy pasting the code and then just running it. Because I find typing is you make mistakes, and what I find is the mistakes I make when I'm typing are possible mistakes that I'm going to make again. So I sort of pick that up as well, and that improves various aspects of learning the language. But there is a third thing about this book which I like as an artifact, and this is, I don't know if anybody has the same feeling about certain hardback books, but there's a certain size of hardback book, and I'm getting really book nerdy here, that just feels right. And this is it. I've got a number of books that are slightly bigger, slightly smaller, and around this size, and they just are like almost perfect. They look cool on the shelf. You're going to use it a lot, and you don't end up breaking the spine like you do. That often happens with larger books that are hardback. But it's just so aesthetically and just, I don't know, physically pleasing to work with. There's a bit of heft there, but it's not super heavy, and it's got a nice sound to it. Yeah. So that's the third thing. So the actual contents, the way it's laid out, and just the packaging, if you like, the way the book is presented in terms of it, it's nice sort of hardback. So yeah, I really do love this book, and it really makes me smile, and I'm definitely going to have to flick through this again and dabble around in a little bit of C. I want to do, I keep fiddling around with various bits of programming, and I suppose my go-to, like a lot of people, is just Python, just to play around with stuff. So you've probably seen stuff I've done in other episodes where, I want to do some scraping on the web and take some data and then convert it to CSV and process it a little bit and manipulate it. And so it is really easy to just fire up, Anaconda or Python, or Python Anaconda, or as a workbook, as a worksheet, however you like to do it, whatever IDE you use, and just get it done. But there's a lot to be said about sitting down and just going back to other languages or learning a new one and just trying to do a similar thing in that language, even though initially it can be super painful. I think you can learn an awful lot from that. Anyway, thanks very much for watching. Bye for now, and I will catch you in the next episode.